For today's program, and for this season 8 of Spectacular Singing, we have a very special piece of music because Katya will be sharing with us from the Russian composer Alexander Alabiev, his Nightingale, or as they would say in Russian, Solovey. So, I think that Katya is willing to share with us a little piece of this song just to get started.
Соловей мой, соловей, доносисти мой соловей, соловей, мой соловей, голосистый
And there are many things that we need to say just before we start addressing the specifics of this song. I noticed that, well, this is what we are seeing on the screen. This time is fully on Katya's because this is her Arias book. And the first thing that I noticed is that it is a leader on Russian composers. And I wanted to start there. Composer Maestro Alabiev, the years of his compositions are he's of the same period of Beethoven and Maestro Rossini, as maybe the last days of Maestro Mozart. That's the period of history that he lived. So we are talking we are talking about a song that was composed over 200 years ago. The style of composition is different. We will talk a little more about that it is from a Russian composer not only means that it is in Russian. I mean, the same way French composer is not only that it is in French and so on. We have talked about that style. There are things about the style that need to be discussed, but it is not only a Russian style. It is also going back to my earlier comment to the early compositions in Russian language. He, in a way, for what I learned, did what some other composers did also. He captured the essence of folklore music of his people and then put him into music. So we are listening to a melody that maybe people who come from that region may be familiar with, provided that it is not a melody he made up. It is a melody that was part of the folklore and then turned into this beautiful piece of music. As such, we cannot say, oh, if it has ornaments, then it is bel canto. Ah, if it was made for coloratura sopranos. We have also shared that even the concept of the sopranos in those early days has changed a lot to what we perceive now. If you have followed the videos that I did for the essentials for non-singers, we even talked about the the La Cuatro, the 440 and 440 hertz. It's very recent. It's less than 100 years. So even the pitch and the tempo and the style is very recent. So try to put that into your imagination when speaking of something that was composed over 200 years ago. And also to mention, even though it's part of the history of Russia when there were the Shars, there is a good number of SARS that are very well known from the perspective of history. Still, the land back there of the Russian Empire is pretty much unknown because opposed to what happened in Europe, where you know that you can travel within hours, you can be in Italy, in France, in Salzburg, in Poland, you can reach almost everywhere in Europe in a matter of hours. The Russian Empire was very vast. So even though there was communication between the empire and the countries in Europe, still there were many things that were not transmitted that fast. So all these particularities are very important because you may have a hard time, you as a listener, trying to understand or to feel the essence of the music because it doesn't flow like it could flow an Italian composition, and it is not a German leader, so it is not going to sound like German only in Russian. So my first question for Katia would be that one. Putting all that into your mind and reading the music, how do you find the way you want and you need it to sound?
Well, I think that I have already shared with all of you that I'm a Russian culture lover because one of my first approaches to classical music it was through the Nutcracker by Il Maestro Tchaikovsky, and I started to approach to some other Russian music and something that I found pretty interesting in Russian music is that it always sounds Russian. You can probably listen mainly in instrumental music, something French or something German or something Italian, not that much, but you can listen some classical music and probably you can't always identify uh, where the composer is from, but you always know when it's Russia, always, because like you just said, they usually take lots of their folkloric music to make it an escolarized music. And we are not talking about a period named nationalism. We are very far away in time from that moment, but I think that for Russia it's not necessary to think in nationalism movement because they always have had a pretty clear identity.
And
Even when Russia is huge, sorry, even when Russia is huge and there are like many subcultures within, uh, Russia it's pretty clear as an identity.
as you mentioned, I wanted to use your comment because you say it always sounds Russian, and of course, the language sounds like that. We have talked a number of times that Italian is very easy to sing because the way the vowels, the color of of Italian goes very well with operatic singing. Opposite to French, that has too many sounds that are immersed in your throat that are not natural to singing. And Russian is somewhere in between, but most of the times, or many times, the singers, even in style, and maybe again, somebody will hate me for my following comment, but I was keeping in mind, for instance, Mirella Freni singing La Pica Dam, Pica Vaya Dama. Uh, the sound is nice, but it is an Italian singing something that it's only Russian music, but it still sounds Italian. So the moment I hear her, I say the sound is nice, but it is not the personality of what is being sung. Um, and that adds to the complexity because not only we're talking about a good amount of time in the past, we are a different culture, a different language. We are also talking about what here in the book was described as a leader. And singing leader requires again perfection in the emission, in the pitch, and also in the interpretation without any exaggeration overdoing, yelling, or doing anything exaggerated. Leader, from the German perspective, and if we are comparing it to leader, requires perfection. And I think this would be the case. Of course, it cannot be a leader because it's from a different culture, a different country. So strictly cannot be a leader, but I agree that it pretty much adheres to those requirements of perfect pitch, perfect understanding of the text, understanding what you're thinking so that what you're saying so that the accent goes Well, it is not just making or doing or sharing ornaments just for the pleasure of ornaments. The story is told in a way, and we are about to get to the story. So, with all that in mind, and tell us before we go into the detail, how do you feel in more precisely how you feel this song? Does it make you feel like comforted, released, stressed? It makes you, it grows your imagination, it relaxes you. What kind of emotion gives you this beautiful song, Solovey?
Okay, let's remember that leader literally means songs. Lead means song. So this is very intimate music, not just because it's thought to be sung uh, just with a piano accompaniment, but it's to share, to communicate a feeling, a story that probably comes from my mother, my grandmother, my and so on. So anytime that I sing leader, and especially with this song, I really really feel a warm in my heart. It's something that caresses my soul. It's something that caresses my heart because I'm singing about a story that really happened. I'm here listening this I always forgot Ruiseñor in English. I
Nightingale?
writing at times because I have Usiñolo solo.
Same happens to me, never in the language that I need.
Thank you. And I feel this intimacy, so it makes me feel like warm and cozy by a fireplace or kind.
And that is very particular when speaking of not only the Russian music, but also about, you know, that there are authors like Pushkin, like authors like Maximo Gorky. From my perspective, Russian literature and poems are I like to describe. It's like there is something about their souls, like it is like they open their souls in their turn, and that you are able to touch it symbolically because they don't need 1,000 words to express something, but you always feel that they are like even though people think they are very cold, they might be very cold in the exterior, but when you read or you sing their music, you notice that it is pure emotion, not in the way Italians would be, because Italians are very clear. No, Santozza, Santozza to qui. You know, it wouldn't be that way the Italian music would do, but these confrontation scenes and that those dramas also happen, but in a different way. And in this case, that we have we people may be thinking, well, if it is, it sounds like a leader, and it is a song, and it is the 1800s, early 1800s, we could expect the music to be like a leader, right? Almost like speaking. And for what you could see hear from Katia, it has a bunch of ornaments there. So that would be my next question. Knowing the intimacy of this song, how do you go through the emotional part and the ornaments and that they still make sense? You see, not that you are going to we're about now we are already are about to start talking about the content of the piece, but it starts preparing until it reaches the ornaments, but that there is no rupture, that you have a lyrical soprano and then jumps into a coloratura that changes the flow of the melody. It needs to be a continuum of how the emotion is being built. So in this case, how do you approach to this music?
Well, remembering that it's an intimacy moment, probably it's like kind of telling telling a story, telling a fairy tale. And if you are talking about probably the princess was walking through the forest, and you start to make noises to represent what in the forest is going on, I feel this kind of ornaments reminding the no, please, the nightingale.
Nightingale, yeah.
Reminding us the nightingale. I think that would be the way to justify for saying it's somewhere, some way to justify the ornaments. Of course, you are talking to the nightingale. You are not the nightingale, but if it's a dialogue, of course, you can remind the nightingale's voice through your ornaments.
Exactly. It is a dialogue. And why don't we now really get started on the words? There are many repetitions, of course. The text is very short. Of course, there are repetitions, and that's why it seems to be longer, but it is not. And I wanted to call your attention to everybody here that we are going to have a tempo of andante con espressione, which for if you haven't seen the videos, I again send you to the essentials for non-musicians or singers, where I explain about these notations about andante, presto, prestissimo, etc. Then you would see that andante, to put it simple, andante means it's not very fast. It is not going to be super quick. It tends more to the slower side of the tempo of the emission of the sounds. So that gives us the first spirit that the voice is it's going to take its time to build on the notes and the context. Even though we are going to see many notes, like in this bar here, it is not going to be like Olympia or the Queen of the Night going like 40 notes per second. It's going to be a
No,
good number of, but this time you will have your enough amount of time so that the note can be identified clearly as it reaches each of the notes there. There are, of course, some achacaturas here, some achacaturas there. And the next thing that I wanted to call your attention to is that the complete song is not really high in the pitch, tends to be more to the medium upper rather than to be in stratospheric with additional lines to the score because it is at the end and it is at we don't need it that often, so it goes more to the center of the soprano voice, and that also gives us the idea of this dialogue. If you're having a dialogue with a bird, in this case a nightingale, you're speaking to him like in close to your natural voice, right? Not like, hey, I am competing with you, bird, again from the beginning. No, still,
no, you're not Fiona.
no, you're not that one. So, and after all these preliminary comments, let's get started. So the song starts stating Salove, and it calls my attention that uses the possessive my Salove, referring to my nightingale. So it is not you bird over there. She has made it her own. So it says nightingale, my nightingale, which is a very nice way of referring to a bird. Because many of the other songs, because remember that the sopranos are into making songs and singing for the nightingales. I was telling Katia that maybe why don't they try ravens or crows or pelicans or anything else, but they like nightingales. There are many of those that refer to the nightingale as you. In this case, she's saying my nightingale. And that really means a lot. That's why I have trouble when reading this music that is so intense emotionally and is still very like content. It's not explosive like Italian, but the whole message of Solove, moi Solove, it's a lot. Also, because it's she's going to have in the moi, she's going to have this small achacatura just to have short these ornaments before repeating the word nightingale. So I don't want to say that it is hard because Kathy is going to say it's very easy.
Because it is.
But think of the emotion that keeping these small ornaments, making this achacatura clear, and without jumping and thinking that you are Olympia. that you are the queen of the night.
Not at all.
Not at all. So, and then what I like about the expression here when she refers, I'm not sure how the translations are because I didn't pay attention to the Morosi qui nous. It is in French and it is in Spanish, right? Ave canora. In Spanish, it is not that precise because it says ave canora. It is like a singing bird. In Russian, it's more like you noisy bird. Truth is that this word is more like noisy, not in a detestable way, but in a way that telling you're not like a quiet bird. You're like making noises, and that's something that I like from you. So, any notes that you would like to share with us for these initial bars? Your thoughts? I mean, you are the singer. I'm just making comments, but you are the singer.
Well, yes, you were saying that it's written in the middle part of the voice, and that's right. But I have to be honest, I sing this not in E flat. I sing it in F.
Don't you think, now that you made this comment, don't you don't you, of course, that makes it more comfortable to your voice, but don't you think that it makes it a little more challenging from an emotional point of view? Because the higher you go into notes, the easier it is for singers to lose the sense of the emotion.
Yes, but I really try to don't lose the idea, and I think that particularly in my case, it helps because I have a very high voice. If I sing in this pitch, indeed I start to think more about my emission, and I probably lose my connection in this sense.
And I think this is also a very good opportunity to share that Slavic voices, I think I commented it on the episode on the chat GPT and Maestro Tchaikovsky. That's when I talked a lot about Slavic voices. Slavic voices tend to be more central than Latin and Italian voices, and then tend to have a very nice bright voice in the center, and for that reason they do not have this easiness for high notes. There
Yeah.
are, of course, there are singers, but most of them sing like in the middle register, middle low, and middle upper. Most of them, they are very powerful voices, but really powerful voices, are very solid, very nice sounds. So that wouldn't surprise us that uh, Maestro Alabiev wrote this piece exactly in the range that would be comfortable for a Slavic voice. Of course, a voice that is higher is not going to feel that comfortable with this range of singing. But let's keep up moving with the song. So she has already talked about my nightingale and this little noisy guy that it is my nightingale. And then she asks, where are you flying? Ty kuda letiš? Gdzie wsiunożku propajesz? Where are you flying? Where are you flying and singing all night? If you see, what I noticed when I read the words, it's like she's building a very strong bond with this little bird, with this little guy, because she could say, "Ah, you beautiful, beautiful bird. Ah, you sing so beautiful, beautiful bird. Ah, you make my life happy. Ah, you are happy when it is spring." But it is not referring to that. She's like very interested in the life or in what this little guy is doing. And that looks nice, right? It is not like, ah, yeah, that bird over there. No, it is my nightingale. Hey, beautiful, nice boy, where are you going at nights? What are you doing during all nights? What are you singing? She's really interested in the life of this little nightingale. That's the other thing that caught my attention.
Yes,
Yeah, go ahead. Sure.
I would like to share that lots and lots of this kind of Russian music, the folkloric songs, usually describes scenes uh, from the life in the woods or the life in the fields. It usually describes how the life is, and it paints a landscape of Russia. And I think that here we can find this girl having a simple forest or field life where probably one of the most beautiful things she has is the voice of this little bird. That's why probably she's so interested.
People who are in contact with nature tend to build these stories and their lives around the nature they are surrounded with. In a way, people originary from the country that we now call Mexico, because I am keeping in mind a song that is called Caminante del Mayab. And the thing that I find very emotional also about singing Caminante del Mayab, which for a tesitura like mine, it is not difficult, but it is long because it has super long notes. Caminante, which if you have any tenor or baritone, it turns into a competition of seeing for how long they can keep the bars of the song going and make a horrible mess out of the song. But the original version of the song refers and speaks and refers to the animals and the sounds they make. And I am mentioning it because the same way it is Caminante del Mayab is a region in Mexico close to where the Mayab is the region where the Mayan culture was developed. So it refers to the people who traveled between the Mayan cities and what they saw. Ah, we saw a bird and we saw the kaab and we saw this and we saw that. Oh, I can see the noise. I can hear the noise of this bird. And they build a relationship with those animals they encounter on the road. Of course, this it is not a road and it is not traveling, but I find the same type of emotion of someone who bears a simple life with the birds, in this case, the nature, the nightingale that she is exposed to. And from an emotion point of view, that's where I say it's kind of complicated because you exaggerate and then it feels artificial and you sing it plain and people notice that you don't really feel the relationship between the two parties. So you have to find that emotionality and the way to project it correctly in your voice so that it is believable. I was sharing in the week with Katia as well some of the recordings that I found. My God, I recall that I told her of two that I said I couldn't hear for more than 5 seconds. It was just the woman, the piano, and singing "Alabiev, my Alabiev," like singing anything. And a song of this quality, of this manufacture, cannot be sung like, "Ah, yeah, oh, Nightingale, my Nightingale," like anything. No, it can't. Any other thoughts that you have on the words, Katia?
Yes, you were saying that Slavic voices are huge voices, and that's true. And that makes me think that it's also written as andante con espressione, because it will be easier for a huge voice to move the ornaments, uh, because when you are a high and a light voice, well, you usually rush with el tempo. But if you have a larger voice, yes, I think that it has to settle. It has to be a little bit slower. But I think that is the purpose, and it works great.
Yeah, I think, and I was thinking that maybe, as we have mentioned in the past, maybe a singing teacher would say, "Ah, I am going to give this to my first year student." At the end, it doesn't have too many high notes, how hard can it be if it doesn't even have an A? So he can get away, or she can get away.
Probably shot in his forehead and it would kill him easier.
Because it is well, let's go back to the point where you say that it is easy, but when you are beginning your career, you are so focused. That's one of the things that I criticize a lot. When you're starting your career, you're so focused on the sound and the technique that you usually forget interpretation. And you cannot get away with a song like this if you forget interpretation, because it's going to sound like anything. I went to the mall, or I went to the supermarket and I bought potatoes and milk. And it's going to sound like that. It's not going to make it. It's not going to work. Milk. No, you cannot play around the E just because it sounds nice. Make it believable, because you can also decide on what syllable or what word to emphasize something, so that you make it mine, having passed the test of the technical of the technique that you're going to use. But you have to attack one thing at a time. If so, when you're starting your career and you just say, oh, I want to make sure that my si bemol sounds well, but the interpretation is horrible. That, and don't think that because you see a singer who has been on stage for over 10 years, he's already mature. You can hear many examples of people who are after 10 years on stage and still haven't understood anything about what they are singing, because they sing everything the same.
Mhm.
No accents, no nuances anywhere, no understanding of the syllables. Uh, no understanding on how they can play with a phrase, with a sound, with a legato, with a pianissimo, how to play with the forte. They don't do anything. They don't even read the scores. So how do you expect them to be able to do something else? So it is not a matter of the number of years or on stage, but on the quality of progress that you have made to access to a song like this. Why don't we go to the second part of the text, where we have Solovey, let me see. It is page 6 on your copies. Solovey, my Solovey, Golosny. We are still on the repetitions of the Golosny Solovey. Let's move to the final, well, to on the page 7, where we have these ornaments, the series of ornaments that you may say, hey, we finally reached Adele from the Fledermaus. We're finally having something like that. The preparation is, it is true that uh, there is not a phase where you start rushing like accelerando in the previous bars, so that you jump into the ornaments. You see, you come from andante and slowly moving fast until you reach the ornaments. They are right after what is still composed in the same style of the previous bars. Taking that into mind and understanding that you're going to tell us that it is easy,
Because it
how are you preparing emotionally and technically to reach the bar where you're going to be able to play a lot?
well, um, I think that the two last bars before this cadenza makes the entire sense of the phrase, because you in this moment are just living your air flows. When you are thinking somebody that you love, you usually say, or you don't say, but it sounds like you release. And that should be the idea of this cadenza. I know that it has lots of notes, but you should feel it like just this idea. We have
I also wanted to stop around for a second or a couple of minutes on the cadenza because you also mentioned it. It is a long series of notes, and maybe I don't know what your advice would be for a cadenza that is this long. To work it, to think it complete, or to work it in pieces and put it together later. What would be your advice to? Because the thoughts of a singer are, oh my God, these are way too many notes. Do I sing randoms if I hit any of those? Nobody
What if
will
I
notice.
just pretend that I sang them?
I just pretend I did it, so nobody notices that I skipped two or three out of the ascending scale. Be- because there
Yes,
are changes in semitones. I mean,
yes. In this case, I started because I still remember how I started. I started singing note by note, almost in staccato. And once that I already understood what this phrase is saying in pitch, when I already have this idea clear, then I think from the low G to the high one like a single piece. Because I already built this part by part. It's like uh, building a puzzle. When you start to build a puzzle, you just see like millions of pieces and they don't have sense. But when you start to make them match and you find a part and then you have another part and you start to see the landscape like just one single thing, and you start to see this like a whole piece. I feel that the music in the same way. I work note by note, pitch by pitch, and then they are just one single thing. That in the case of the scale. Then I take a breath, I slow down, always taking care of the emission that it doesn't feel like you are in a free fall and you are gonna hit with the ground because that's gonna kill the lead. And when you are uh, descending, but if you have a higher note ahead, like this E flat, where you say Salabie, I would recommend to think your emission from the F. We have G, A, 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 G. That F connected to the next E flat in emission. Not in pitch, obviously, because you are gonna descend, yes, but keep that note in mind, that pitch in mind. Do keep your position in a high position, and that will make your sounds like a single thing, and not with that many color changes.
because I think we haven't mentioned it, or maybe I mentioned it when I talked about La Donna Immobile, but maybe we can extend that comment now. That singers tend to get lost or have this tendency to get lost in the cadenza. And if you notice, this cadenza has, I would say that it has too many indications from the composer. So he has a very clear idea on how he wants to sound it to sound, sorry. He really knows, and he gave you, for instance, he gave you the Fermata de Calderon here so that you can keep it. And of course, since it is a cadenza, there is no music by your side, so it's basically your voice. But he says, hey, but you're not going to do exactly what you want. You're going to start here. You will be ascending here, taking your time. Then you are moving to this guy who immediately will be moving between two adjacent notes. You're going to wrap and then you're going to continue here. And as you said, and that is very important, and that's why many singers get lost because they know with what note they start, but they hardly ever know with which one they end. In these random throwing away notes, and you can see it in many Lucias de la Mermur when they go to to their mad scenes. They start playing with the notes, and at the end, the soprano is like, "Where am I going to end in an E and an F?" Or,
What am I doing?
whatever happens, people are going to get me an applause, and so they say, "I'm going to hit something higher than a G," and people will get me the applause, and I will sustain it longer so that they see it is nicer. But it is not. The truth is that she got lost. She really didn't prepare the cadenza well, and so sometimes it sounds messy. I'm not going to give names again, but if you go critically watch some recordings and notice that many sopranos get lost in Lucia when they want to play with the cadenzas. Even you say, is that still Donizetti or what are they singing now? Because it now sounds super weird.
Why
And
does it sound like 20th century?
yeah, and let's go. Since we are almost reaching the end of today's program, let's go for the final part of the text that it's going to be repeated when she says uminia uminia li la doi dorok jemusia grudig uminia la doi garoshkie narukie. Uh, the words, even though they are still very simple, she still uses words like that reflect emotion towards this little bird. I was noticing in special the word dwarach, like deer. So if you take in mind that she said my nightingale, and later she's going to say dwarach, deer, we are still watching or witnessing a strong connection between the singer and the rest of the text. These are not words that you usually find in. Again, go to other Rossignolos and you will find that it's, yeah, yes, you were sing, sing, sing. Hey, move to another flower. Hey, now do this. You're singing. It's springtime, like very impersonal, while this one is all the time very personal. Uh, From I grouped the text into three groups. The Salabei, my Salabei, the second one Uminia Liu Mladoi, and the final part that I grouped is the I'm you Nochku Narukie, because I'm going to hold you in my hands through the nights. That is it's beautiful, it's short, and it's intense. How how do you feel you should progress towards the end of the song? Because um, it is not a song that evolves like an opera aria when you know, hey, the soprano is getting ready for the high C or the high D or the E flat or how do you prepare for reaching your end? Because at the end, you're going to have on page 11, you're going to have the opportunity to make your final ornaments, but still, you are not coming from a bunch of ornaments like when you're preparing a cabaletta for Lucia de la Mermur. Ta, 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 ta. No, it's not like that. The tempo is not changing. You are, in fact, coming from, yes, some ornaments, but I would say that they are still in control just before. the final bars with the ornaments. How do you feel that this final part of the song must be prepared?
Well, it's not easy.
Oh, first time you
Bec-
say that it's not easy. Keep that in mind, guys.
because I will not say it again. It's not easy in the sense that you could feel tempted to sing it like an aria, like the Queen of the Night, and that's completely the other side of the coin because here you have to sound delicate. It has to fit with the rest of the song. So it once I said that you can imagine your score, your song, like one or probably the four elements. So for me, this Nightingale, it's it's water, but like a very very calm water. I would think in a very little a young river, not a furious one. So your voice, your sound should run like this delicate water. This cadenza has to sound like this. If you are singing like no, it doesn't work. And then you leave that the piano makes the rush part because here you will listen bam 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 ba-da-dum, 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 but let the piano makes it work. You have to sing this delicately.
You have already done your job. The soprano has already sung the ornament, has already reached her high note. So as you mentioned, and the composer decided, but it is not her high note that wraps the song. It's going to be the music because that is more in the style of the Italian music. The Italian music usually wraps up with a high note and maybe two or more bars for the music, but it's just, to wrap up with volume and intensity. It's not the case. It still takes some 3/6. It still takes 7 bars to wrap up the piece. So the soprano finishes and just waits for the music to conclude the song.
Yes. There is a F because it's the climax, it's the ending of the song, but if you pay attention to the score, it's just one F. The double one is for the piano.
That is also very important because we have mentioned many, many, many times in the past that there are unfortunately way too many singers who want to resolve everything with volume. So how do I make it impressive? Volume. How do I do this? In volume. How do I do that? Long. And between long and volume, and so everything sounds monotonous. And again, you're not going to get away with a piece of music like this if you're singing everything out loud. You're going to get tired because you're going to get tired by the middle of the song. You're going to be super tired. And when you want, if you have reached consistently high volume, when you reach the final cadenza, you will not have the volume or enough voice to make it impressive because it has to be impressive but nice, not just impressive. It has to be impressive but emotional and nice. But people will not believe you because they hear you singing out loud everything. And the only way to construct a nice emotion is working on the volumes correctly. And and don't try for the final solo way, don't try to add any high note at at the end. It is not required. It is not needed. Don't extend it for longer. Just you did your job. Let the music continue and wrap up. Any final thoughts on this beautiful piece of music, Katia?
Yes, there was a teacher at the university that usually like to say something like in Spanish it was el viejo truco de hacer lo que dice el papelito. The old trick to do what is written in the piece of paper. So if it's written an F, I will sing an F. If it's written a middle C, I will sing the middle C, and that will work for sure.
That's uh, if you have perfected it enough so that you can start thinking of doing something else to make your own version, but that will come later. But believe me, before you master a song like this, it's going to take you a good number of hours.
That's right.
Well, with that being said, I would like to thank everybody for having followed those. I haven't mentioned it, but you know that it keeps growing. So you can read on the screen that we have listeners in 692 cities, 692, but today they are 695. We are so close to 700, and I think that next month, remember that the premiere for the spectacular singing is on the second week of each month. So next month for this season 8, I think we are going to be able to share with you a very positive surprise. I think it's going to be something that everybody is going to love. Katya and I have started our conversations on that. So keep tuned to find out. With that being said, thank you very much. Thank you, Katya.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.